You know, there never seems to be a dull moment when it comes to the world of MMA. Tonight we got a top 2, pound for pound, Dana White's Contender Series episode for the season. Sean Strickland's hurt, and Darren Till's getting arrested again? What is up, guys? Welcome back, and welcome to the latest episode of MMA Newswired, where I take you through the daily news and spin in the world of mixed martial arts. As usual, another jam-packed news day, especially coming off the heels of another exciting Dana White's Contender Series episode. And the Contender Series will be the starting point for today's show, as UFC President Dana White awarded UFC contracts to all 5 of the evening's winners. And it was one of those shows where the fans got to see a little bit of everything, with Blake Bilder kicking things off with a rear naked choke victory over Alex Morgan, Victoria Dudakova picking up a closely contested yet somewhat decisive unanimous decision victory over Maria Silva, Mateusz Rebecki picking up the win with a very slick back take of Rodrigo Ledillo that resulted in a rear naked choke of his own. Then of course we have Cedric Dumas, who did his best imitation of the Dragon Capture Jar from Yu-Gi-Oh!, taking out his opponent with a guillotine choke within the first minute of his fight. And then of course we have the star of the show, Yusaku Kinoshita, who put Jose Enrique out cold just seconds into the third round of their fight. The knockout, which came on a beautiful counter left hand, is probably my favorite knockout of the season. Just the sheer force that Kinoshita hits Enrique with. Oh my. Yeah, I could actually feel the force in my chair right now. It's insane. And the crazy thing about the knockout was Kinoshita didn't even really have to step into it too much. He just kind of stuck his hand out there and just leveled him. It's absolutely a thing of beauty. Doesn't happen if the other guy doesn't overcommit on a shot like Enrique did, but whoa, man, he must have really overcommitted, because that was something special. And Kinoshita's big win comes at a really great time, as the UFC is always looking for East Asian stars, particularly in the Japanese market, which seems to have fallen off in recent years. What with the retirement of Takanori Gomi, Yushin Okami, there haven't really been too many Japanese fighters that have stepped up to that mantle. Now, mind you, that fight was somewhat competitive leading up to the knockout, but man, it was a beautiful knockout. Not to mention, Kinoshita is only 22 years old. He trains out of King's MMA. The guy's only going to be getting better from here on out, and he might have a favorable schedule coming his way too. Remember, the UFC doesn't have too many bankable, proven Japanese stars at this point. You've got now Kinoshita and then Tetsuro Taira at flyweight. I think those guys are going to be getting favorable schedules going forward. They could be the future of Japanese MMA. Both guys bring something very exciting to the table, and I'm going to be very interested to see where their careers go. Having said all that, I do think that Mateusz Rebecki had the best performance in the night. He looks to be the guy most ready to do some damage right now in his weight class, and he's really going to be an interesting matchup for a lot of the guys at 155 pounds. Not too many people are going to be able to push him around. Maybe Islam Makhachev. Although, man, that guy is every bit as strong as Islam, it would seem. To finish that choke the way he did without even needing hooks, yeah, he's going to be a problem. And I think overall, this has to be one of the most talented seasons that we've gotten on the Contender Series yet. And we're even getting Bo Nickel a second time. So, you know, once he inevitably wins his third fight, I think this could go down as one of the all-time great Contender Series seasons. We had one notable fight announcement today, with Amir Albazi set to take on Alex Perez at a UFC event on December 17th. Should be a fun one. If you recall, Albazi coming off a first-round handling of Francisco Figueiredo at UFC 278, getting him out of there via rear naked choke just before the bell could sound to end the first round. So I think this is a case of Albazi wanting to strike while the iron's hot, and Perez, really needing a fight to get back on the saddle, because he had a bit of a longer than anticipated layoff with all of his fight cancellations earlier in the year. But I think what makes it such a compelling matchup is just that Albazi, typically a very safe fighter, he's not necessarily a guy that's going to go for it. That being said, while Albazi was able to get the lesser Figueiredo out of there in his last fight, he's really not too much of a finisher. But ultimately, the guys that Perez has struggled with lately are the uber aggressive ones, and Albazi doesn't really fit the bill for that. Generally, I like Perez's skill set, so I'm going to pick him to win that fight, but, I could end up changing my tune as we get closer. The fight does carry some significance in the flyweight division right now. It'll be number 6 versus number 10, which I think will be lost on a lot of people, because that division still isn't quite as deep as it I believe it will be. And while I love the flyweights and I love the flyweight division, it's also no secret the depth there isn't where I believe it will get to at some point in the future. That being said, a great opportunity for both men to potentially assert their claim at a top 5 spot at 125 pounds. The Swedish newspaper Expressen reported that Darren Till, of all people, found himself arrested in late July on drunk driving charges. He did have one passenger in the car, an unidentified woman, who told the authorities that Till had been driving, although Till denied this himself initially before confessing to the fact that he drove. I'm not really sure how either person would have to claim that someone was driving. I mean, who was behind the wheel when the cops showed up? That's what I want to know. We do have plenty of reason to believe, however, that it was Till behind the wheel of the car, as police reported that he tested 3 times above the legal limit. The report also stated that Till accepted a penalty order. Now, it's unfortunate to see what's kind of become of Darren Till in recent years. You could say he's had some bad luck, but this was a guy, remember, he got the Ultimate Warrior treatment. He got the rocket ship to the welterweight title well before he was ready, granted, and Tyron Woodley, I think, taught him a very valuable lesson in their main event fight. You know, it is a great shame to see what's become of Till in recent years, and I know that if he were here right now, he would tell me to my face, "No, you're wrong, nothing's become of me, I've just had some bad luck, and I'm taking 2 fights before the year's out, and I'm going to get back on the horse and get back into title contention." But there's also an expression that would indicate that, you know, to some degree, you create your own luck. And what I mean by that is, you kind of need to put yourself in the right positions in order to see that kind of sustained success over a full career, regardless of what you do. And if you're surrounding yourself with the wrong team, the wrong people, and I'm not suggesting that Darren Till is, all I'm suggesting is he's fallen off the wagon a bit here, and it's sad to see. This guy, I thought after he beat Stephen Thompson in Liverpool, weight miss controversy and all, I thought the sky's the limit for Darren Till. This guy is money. You know, he's kind of got this like innocent sort of look to him, but you know, he's got a neck tattoo and he kind of likes to live dangerously. He's got a tattoo of, I believe, his ex on, I forget if it's his left or right arm, but then he packages it with this big personality. I remember when he spoke ahead of his fight at MSG about octagon jitters, nerves, and actually feeling scared before stepping into a fight. You know, one of the biggest misconceptions that I think a lot of fighters have is that you need to talk shit to be a superstar. You don't need to talk shit to be a superstar. You just have to find a way to relate to people. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. Make a blog, be active on social media, give the fans access, do a cooking show like Alex Volkanovski does. But either way, make yourself accessible and available to your fans. And Darren Till, you know, say what you want about him, he does that. But now he needs to get his house in order inside the octagon if he wants to see any sort of career longevity. And I'm hoping he can. I hope he's serious about taking 2 fights to close out the year, because if he can get a pair of W's going into 2023, who knows what the future might hold. But with Till finding himself in trouble with the law once again, it doesn't really paint a nice picture of what could be coming. Ben Askren made some waves on Twitter, responding to a fan asking him how he believes a rematch with George Masvidal would go. To that, Askren replied, "It's the only thing I would come out of retirement for." And you know, it really got me thinking, might that be the fight to make for George Masvidal in the welterweight division? I mean, sure, he could fight Gilbert Burns. It's one of those situations where Gilbert, you know, for taking the Khamzat Chimaev fight when he certainly didn't have to, he kind of deserves something good to happen to him. And regardless of what you think of George Masvidal, he is something of a draw, which, going back 5 years ago, 10 years ago, looking into the crystal ball, it seems like it would be crazy to say. But here we are. But if fans want to keep seeing Street Judas in big money fights, he's going to have to start putting some wins together. And the way Masvidal's mind works when it comes to thinking about future opponents for himself, it's all about the easiest fight with the most amount of eyeballs. It's the fighter's version of people in the private sector wanting a job that pays them more for fewer hours. And when you look at things from Masvidal's perspective, I think it is fair to wonder what he thinks about a potential rematch with Askren. This is a guy who's still less than 2 years removed from back surgery, and I don't think I need to mention how the first fight went, but I'll do it anyway.
The fight clock is brought to you by Modelo.
Sorry, Ben. But what makes this such an intriguing fight is, I'm personally of the school of thought that Ben Askren beats George Masvidal 8 out of 10 times, maybe. And I think at this point, maybe that number drops to 7 out of 10 times, but I really like Ben's chances in a rematch. You might say, oh, well, how could you say that? Ben hasn't competed in mixed martial arts in X amount of years. So with him having had back surgery, what has changed since then? I just think that flying knee, as much as it was a thing of beauty, I don't think it lands even 30% of the time, even 20% of the time. I wouldn't go any lower than 10% because it was clearly, something that George saw that Ben might do, and he had him well scouted, and it was really just the perfect storm of Masvidal rushing forward, the technique, the power, and Askren running forward and leaning right into it. But if that knee doesn't happen, does Masvidal beat Askren? I would say probably not. And even with Askren's back being an added element into the rematch, I think it's a win-win for both parties. Askren gets a chance to avenge his loss, and Masvidal, if he sees Askren as a winnable guy, everybody's going to be wanting to see that fight. And if he can finish Askren in a similar fashion to how he did the first time, that would be worth like 4 or 5 wins in the minds of many fans. Maybe not in my mind, but we do need to be realistic with the way things work. So if for some reason this rematch comes together, and I do think it's possible with Askren, I mean, who would have saw him boxing Jake Paul, you know what I mean? If for any reason this harebrained rematch does get made, who do you guys like? Who do you think? Do you think Askren would be able to wrestle Masvidal successfully, or do you think Masvidal can make lightning strike twice? The Sean Strickland-Jared Cannonier fight that was scheduled to headline a UFC event, likely at the Apex on October 15th, is no mas. A finger infection that Strickland suffered during sparring, going back almost a week ago now, is the culprit. And he'll need to get surgery now, which will put him out of action up to around that point. UFC President Dana White broke that news during his weekly scrum at the end of this week's Dana White Contender Series episode. White also mentioned that Cannonier had been taken off the show, so it seems like the UFC is going to be keen to rebook that fight, perhaps later in the year, hopefully before the end of the year, and a new headliner will be announced at some point in the not-so-distant future. Guys, if you haven't seen this injury, it's unlike anything I've ever seen before. It's one of those things where you think you've seen it all, and then you get something like this. So according to Strickland, he consensually, and the fighter's tooth actually came out lodged into Strickland's index finger. It created one of the most gnarly cuts you'll ever see. It was such that the skin was so far off Strickland's finger, it almost looks like he left the tooth in the cut as a means of almost like a badge of honor, so to speak. But no, he didn't take care of that thing the right way, didn't get the Neosporin on it. Now as a result, doctors are going to have to operate on Strickland's finger. It honestly looks like he lodged it in a pencil sharpener or something like that. Strickland had this to say about the injury: I don't know what the fuck happened. Camp was going really fucking good. I had a hard spar on Thursday. I woke up Friday and was like, hey, you know what? My finger's a little sore. And then throughout the day, I was like, my finger is fucked. So I went to the hospital, and it turns out I have a really bad infection from a tooth. And yeah, they're going to cut me open and drain it out. I should have went to college, you guys. I don't fucking know. I'm going to be out for like 3 weeks though, so that's fucking life, right? Strickland may claim to be out only 3 weeks, but if that were the case, then maybe the Cannonier fight wouldn't have had to have been in jeopardy. But it really feels like it's going to be more of a 4 to 6 week injury. In that case, it kind of would have put him up against it. I see no reason why this fight doesn't get remade at some point later in the year. The funny thing is, after Strickland got knocked out by Pereira, I actually leaned over to a buddy of mine, and we were watching it together, and I said, you know what? If Jared Cannonier loses tonight, Cannonier Strickland is the fight to make. I don't know why I thought that or how that just popped into my head. It seemed to have made sense, and the UFC agreed. So hopefully we see that one get made again. I think that's a very fun fight. It could be a good get-right fight for Strickland if he plays his cards right. Our final piece of news for the night comes from the pro wrestling world, where on the most recent episode of Monday Night Raw, Seth Rollins and Matt Riddle recreated the infamous John Jones-Daniel Cormier interview, where both men in separate rooms started jawing at each other when the show went off the air.
Riddle, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
We talk about my family, man. Let's talk about your family. Oh, wait, you ain't got one because your wife divorced you and took your kids and they don't want to see your bitch ass anymore, huh?
What did you just say?
Yeah, you heard me.
Where are you?
Bitch.
Where are you?
I'm here. Come find me.
And needless to say, things quickly escalated with the tone going from testy to personal real quick. It's always good to see pro wrestling pay homage to MMA and vice versa. These are two worlds that borrow a great deal from one another, and that's why on this channel I'll be talking some pro wrestling too down the line. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to work in the pro wrestling content yet, but it is something that's on my radar, and you know, like I said, it always feels good to see this. I recall one time in a match with CM Punk and Daniel Bryan, I believe it was the Monday after the Anderson Silva Chael Sonnen rematch, they recreated the spot where Sonnen feebly attempts that spinning back fist, ends up on his ass, and Silva ends up kneeing him in the chest, getting the TKO victory. On a side note, I am loving the new WWE direction under Triple H. I had no doubt, and I figured that the changes would be sweeping, but I also hear the perspective that Billy Corgan has given in a couple different interviews, where when asked about Triple H taking over, he compared it to a very sophisticated control panel where you can't just go pushing all the buttons. You kind of have to do one thing at a time and see what controls what. Clash at the Castle should be fun, if nothing else. But like I said, good to see WWE borrowing from the UFC here, putting a unique spin on what is one of the more iconic interview moments when it comes to UFC feuds. Would love to hear your guys' thoughts on that. Plus, what did you think of tonight's Contender Series episode? And do you guys believe that Darren Till's latest arrest gives you any bit more pause as to whether or not you believe he can make a comeback? Let me know in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like what you saw, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, share the video around. Helps out a ton. Catch you in the next one.